This might be the most overlooked research library in America, but what's inside will surprise you. 400 years of East and West history, rare books from China, Europe, Japan and Korea, word maps, carved art, all under one roof. Hello my friends, I'm Kathy. Welcome to Library Hunter, and today we're in Boston. I'm at the Ricci Institute at Boston College. The Ricci Institute at Boston College is a research center dedicated to East and West culture exchange. It houses a rare book library with manuscripts, maps, art, and archival materials that trace centuries of interaction between China, Japan, Korea, and Europe. If you've never stepped into a research library before, you're not alone. They're not built for everyday browsing. They're made for specialized study, housing the kinds of rare materials you will never find in a public library. Stitch-bound classics, carved credenzas, kosetsu boards, and the replica of the legendary 1602 word map. In this video, we're going to see them all. I also made a second video where I sit down with the librarians themselves, the people who protect these materials and keep the past alive.
If you can read all the books in your library, the library is really too small. You must have more than you can read so that you can explore new things. So I'm hoping that this institute can remain that kind of resource.
So they asked me if I would like to take a chance at cataloging this, because cataloging Chinese books was a new thing. If you have gloves on, you can't feel to turn the page. And you do more damage to the page by trying to turn it than you did if you had it.
So don't forget to watch the part 2 video as well, because together they tell the full story of why those old and rare books still matter, and how we make sure they survive for the generations to come. So let's start from part 1. As usual, we will begin the tour by walking through the stacks, and meanwhile, let's listen to a 2-minute audio clip from recently retired librarian Mark, while he explains how the Ricci Institute got its name.
We're called the Ricci Institute after Matteo Ricci, right?
Yeah.
I guess you know who he is. 16th century Jesuit missionary. Is considered the founder of the China mission. Although he wasn't the first Jesuit to go to China, but he was the most successful and the most illustrious. And there were many others after him who were just as competent and talented. And it's really quite remarkable the kind of work that they did. The reason that the Jesuits and Ricci were important is that for about 200 years, from about 1550 to about 1800, say, a little longer than that, the Jesuits were the primary intermediaries between East and West, so between China and including the Sinosphere, Japan, Korea as well, and Europe, because America hadn't been invented yet. It was the Jesuits who interpreted what went back and forth. So information about China to Europeans was often based on Jesuit reports. So things about the politics and government, who their rulers were, what their food was like, what their history was about, what things did they make. Most of that was stuff written about Jesuits. The same thing was true on the Chinese side. The Jesuits wrote many books in Chinese. In fact, there are some like Alfonso Bagnone wrote something like 42 books in Chinese on education, on all kinds of things like that in Chinese. But many times they were based on European sources. So Chinese and East Asia in general got their first information about Europeans from the Jesuits. Ricci's 1602 map, which I can show you in a minute, he did it almost as a favor to friends at court. It's the first time on a Chinese map that the west coast of Europe and Africa, North and South America, or the poles were ever shown on a Chinese map. This is a portrait of Matteo Ricci that was done the same year he died. And it was done by a Chinese Jesuit named Yo Wenhui, or Chinese took the name Emmanuel Yo, and he was trained in oil painting, and he made that painting of Ricci. This is a copy, He made a painting of Ricci, and the original was sent to Rome, and it's in the Jesuit residence now. This is an exact replica of it, actually made by a special Seiko process, so it retains the 3D feel and image. So you can go right up to it and you can see it's exactly like the original exhibition from the Tushan workshop at Shujiahui. And this is by this same group of carvers who sent it to San Francisco for the 1915 exposition. This is a famous scene with Zhuge Liang accepting the surrender. Remember the story? The castle here, the General Zhuge makes him think it's occupied and ready to fight, but there's actually nobody in it.
空城计.
Yeah, that's the scene. Yeah, you can see all the spears and shields and so on, which are not manned. But the enemy general is so discouraged by this that he surrenders immediately to General Zhuge.
Oh yeah.
And this is an original 1716 document. It's dated here, see? 50-50 year of Kanshi. And it's written in Latin and Chinese and Manchu. And it is a document that was sent to the ports of entry for any Westerners entering to follow the decrees of Ricci until his emissaries Provana and his associates returned from the embassy to Rome. So this is kind of a letter. This was signed by the Jesuits who were in Beijing at the time. Actually, they're not all Jesuits. Ripa and Pedrini were not Jesuits, but they were Catholic missioners anyway. He was a convert. He was a Catholic convert, but he was really Xu was an important Ming official. He held a very high rank, and so he was a kind of a friend and protector and proponent of Ricci's teachings. So they did a lot of work together. In fact, his daughter Candide donated the land at Shuhui. Shujiahui.
Oh yeah, I've been to that.
Yeah, it's a really fancy district now.
Yeah.
In those days, it was just the kind of the bean fields by itself. And these are all things that were made in China. Most things were made in China. Including the Jijin, the ceremonial cap that the priests wore. This is a map, high mass cards in Mass in Latin, and all the woodwork and materials in the book, missal stand to hold the book, were all made in China. And this is a 19th century copy of a 17th century book by Julio Aleni, Nisaji, and in it, it explains a lot of the meaning of the Mass, but it also explains the meaning of this cap, what it means, why it has four sides, and why it has certain illustrations and decorations.
You mean the shape or the patterns?
The pattern and the contents of the embroidery is different on each one.
Oh.
I think they were used for Taoist ceremonies, but they're often used for Catholic Mass.
Wow.
Because we burn incense and we have flowers and candles and so on. And these are part of Dr. Wu's collection. These are 18th century copper plate engravings of Qianlong's military campaigns. Made of what's called the Xi'an stele. It's the earliest known official presence of Christianity, the Church of the East in China. And it was the earliest Silk Road Christians arrived in the northwest of China in the Tang Dynasty. And in the year 635 was the first missions of the they call them Nestorians sometimes, or Syriac Christians. By the mid-Tang Dynasty, you can see it's dated here, so 685. The church was officially permitted, supported by the state, and this stele actually represents the background of the church. It's Christian background, and the Jingzhao is what they call this, the pure religion. There wasn't really a word now for the Catholic Church. We say Tianzhujiao or Jidujiao. What's interesting about this is that this had been lost for centuries until like the 1600s, around 1660, when it was dug up in Xi'an, and they made rubbings of it, and word got out that it was this. At first, it was thought to be a form of Buddhism, because it's often mistaken for a Buddhist like a text. Because if you read some of the creation story, it could be a Buddhist story. But you can see it has a Syriac script of the Syriac monks who were witnesses. And in fact, Syriac is still the language of the East Church of the East. In the headquarters, the world headquarters was in Baghdad, but these churches still exist. There's one in San Francisco. So
Wow.
Father John could come on and he could read these names still, because that's still the name of the ecclesial language. By the way, this rubbing doesn't do it justice. The original the original one has giant dragons and clouds, and it's on a huge tortoise, a turtle shell. So the original one is ginormous. It's huge. This is just a rubbing of the carved part. So this doesn't do it justice. If there are pictures in some of our texts of the original one, it survives. It's in China, in the forest of Stili, as they say. Yeah. So Catherine Ilionis was the daughter of a merchant from Genoa, from Italy, named Domenico Ilionis. Domenico is mentioned in Marco Polo's books. He was a merchant with a series of trading houses along the Silk Road all the way to China. In the port city of Yangzhou, his granddaughter, Katharina, died in the year 1342, so during the Yuan Chao, the Yuan dynasty, the Mongol dynasty, and was buried there. And the tomb again, the stone was lost for years until 1951, when some soldiers were taking the stones down to rebuild it, to reflag a wall. And one of the soldiers saw this funny carving, so he put it in his wheelbarrow and took it to the Yangzhou City Museum. And the curator there recognized it as a form of Latin. So he made this rubbing, he actually made two, rubbing, and sent it to Father Francis Rouleau, who was a Jesuit who was still in China, in Shanghai, in 1951. He left in 1952. Father Rouleau brought this with him when he came, and when he did a study on it, he realized that this is the earliest known Roman Catholic iconography shown in China. This is the martyrdom of Catherine of Alexandria in the 3rd century. So the wheel with the blades on it, the soldier, who you might notice is dressed as in Manchu garb, beheading, with the sword, the friar with the baby, which represents the soul, the angels lifting the tombstone to let the soul out to go to heaven. And so this was a very unusual mix of metaphors, kind of a hybrid. It turns out that this area of Yangzhou was a cemetery for foreign merchants. In the same area, tombstones were uncovered in Hindi, Malayalam, Arabic. Also, about 5 years later, her brother Antonio's tombstone was discovered in the same area. Now, at some point, this became the property of a personal collector, though, because this little carved part here, Yin Wei had the pleasure of viewing this. So this one time had been looked at by a collector, and he actually carved the name on the stone. Who this collector is exactly, we only have this pen name. We don't really know who it was, because the stone was apparently just with a lot of the other tombstones in the area. So the port city of Yangzhou was a huge. In fact, that's where Marco Polo, when he returned to Italy, he left from the port city of Yangzhou. He and his uncle were accompanying a Mongol princess to the Middle East to marry the Khan of the Levant, the Arghun. He was one of the Khans of the Middle East. And from there, Marco returned to Italy, where he was captured in the naval battle with Genoa. And Marco Polo actually didn't write the book himself. He told his story to a person he was in jail with, he was in prison with. And this jail, Rustichello was his name. He was an Italian writer of a romance novel, fancy novels. And he took the story and wrote the book that we know as Marco Polo's. In Italian, they called it Il Milione, the millions, because it was everybody thought he was exaggerating, but Marco talks about Yangzhou, about the bridges and the city, how beautiful it was, and all these things. These are some of the materials we had for the exhibit. Mårten was some of our workshop participants were interested in linguistics, so we have books on Shanghai dialect, Hakka dialect, Keja dialect, things like that. And these are linguistic books on the topic. We have rare materials from the dictionary project that was started many years ago by the judges of a Chinese dictionary. So they were working on this project here.
Are these original copies?
They are.
Wow.
This is just one box of them. There are thousands of them.
I feel the paper is still very
Yes. They were done on typewriters. And so this is very thin, so you can make copies of them easily with carbon paper. Here's one. Let me show you how it looked. This was done in the 1940s and early 50s. But you can see how they would have to write the character in by hand with different pronunciations. See? Yeah.
It's nice. So this is just one part of the dictionary.
One fascicle. Yes, literally just like one section.
Wow.
Of a very large dictionary. It was actually originally to be done in 5 languages. Ultimately, it was finally produced in French only, in quite a different form. But it was a long project. This works on the Franciscans of the early 16th century in Asia. This is a Catholic spiritual journey map showing the road to heaven and the road to hell, and it's a very unusual and rare map, so a lot of people have been interested in studying this. You can see most of the works here are Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. For example, we have a Daizokyo, which is the Tacang Jing, the Japanese Taisho edition of the Buddhist canon. We have a Qianlong edition of the same thing right here. And then we have collected works on Buddhism, on Taoism, the Tushu Jiqiang and some other traditional Chinese sources. Zifu Yuangui, which is a collection of edifying stories from Chinese classical history as a means of edification for scholars and proper government and things like that. And it's mixed with things like Tokugawa's letters prohibiting Christianity, and in Japan, this is it's a Maria Kanon, as they call it. It's just like this one here, which appears to be Buddhist. It's actually supposed to be Mary and Jesus. This is actually made in China, even though it was sent to Japan. And Father Anthony found it in Japan. These boards are kosatsu boards. I don't know if you saw the movie Silence by Martin Scorsese, or perhaps the movie Shogun. They're based on real characters, anyway, real people. Gracia Hosokawa is played by the girl who plays Mariko. That's based on a real person. These kosatsu boards basically are they're government decrees that prohibit Christianity. This is one of the earlier ones from, I think, around 1643. And this one actually is offering rewards in silver for turning in Christians. And these others are this is the latest one we have, and this was intermediate. So the prohibition against Christianity in Japan lasted from around 1603 up until 1675, when the new constitution was. Materials on Dasan, this Korean scholar, Korean scholar and sage who wrote lots of books. One of the advantages of reading Chinese is that the old Korean texts are all written in classical Chinese, so it's possible to read them. And these are similar works that are in Korean itself, court cases and Jiao An cases and things like that. These are regional records that we use for biographical and bibliographical purposes. Even though the Hangul characters were developed in the 1440s, the scholars continued to write or to use Chinese over the next few centuries, gradually replacing more and more of the Chinese characters with the Hangul.
Wow. Did they speak Chinese?
That's a good question. Probably not, but they could read it.
Wow, that's hard to imagine.
Yeah, it was the same way in Japan for a long time too. A lot of the records in Japan, even though structurally the languages are they're different. I could show you printing. We have some printing blocks from Japan, and they're written in Chinese, but they have what's called kanbun, the little reading marks that are put there on the board so that a Japanese audience could read the Chinese because it would tell them what was the subject, verb, and object, so they could figure it out. Word Daizokyo, some of the larger art books and so on. You can recognize some of them, the complete Tang literature and poetry, books on the Jiezu and Huajuan, the mustard seed garden manual of painting, and many other materials like this. Since it's Halloween, a lot of ghost stories in here.
Yeah.
So these are all Korean works. In fact, the King Sejong's work that he had his scholars compose that developed Hangul is in this text right here. It's reproduced. I can show you what it looks like if you're interested. This is a reproduction of the original, and it looks like this.
Wow.
So the introduction, and it's explaining the different forms, how the Korean Hangul were developed. Of course, this is an early draft. It was the 1400s. Over the centuries, there were modifications, and some forms fell out of use as the language changed. But this is where it all started. You can see, this is how we used to have them back at USF. So we'd have the row with the books, the titles on there, and of course they'd have catalog tags so you could find them. But for example, you would just have them stacked this way with the titles on the bottom. This is how. Now, some of them we would make the boxes for the titles and box them. But for most of these, we didn't have a chance to do that. By the way, here's Shiritoji, Dream of the Red Chamber. Everybody likes that story. This is a nice old late Qing edition. I think there's some illustrations here in volume 1. Yeah, the story of the stone.
Oh, that's nice. Wow.
This is a record of Qianlong's southern tours, where he would visit, do various visits to the south, take notes on the conditions there, draw pictures of gardens and things he admired. So there's a lot of illustrations in here. This is one of the oldest books that we have. This is a Guanzi. Guanzi is a work of legalism. This is a 1579 edition. So this would have been circulating in China when Ricci got there in 1583. And you can see the paper is really excellent quality in the late Ming Dynasty. This one, someone made notes.
Wow. What does it say?
One of the previous owners. Vermilion notes. It's kind of the way. It's a commentary on this clause here. Yeah, the Guanzi is a work of legalism. You're familiar with that? One of the
Legal.
Confucianism, Faja, like Qin Shi Huang followed Faja, legalist. One of the old schools of Chinese philosophy. And, this big chest is the credenza. Was carved by the young men at the orphanage workshop in Shanghai at the Xujiahui. And it was made for the 1915 Panama Pacific exhibition in San Francisco to celebrate the opening of the Panama Canal. And the Republic of China, the Nanjing government, asked the fathers in Shanghai if they could send Chinese artworks to represent the China Pavilion, because it was like a World's Fair of the Pacific Rim. So Korea and Canada, everybody, Chile, everybody along the Pacific Rim sent the stuff to their art. And this was one of the big items that they sent. the, the the instructor of the shop was a German, a Bavarian, brother Aloysius Beck. But his favorites, so this is like a Germanic credenza, but his favorite story was the Sanguini. So,
Wow.
so these are all Sanguo characters.
Sanguo characters.
See,
Oh.
Guangong and all.
Oh yeah. I didn't realize.
This thing was built, except for the hinges and a couple of repairs, was built in traditional Chinese fashion, meaning there are no nails or screws. Everything is held together with pins or blocks of mortise and tenon. So all those pieces come apart. So when we shipped this from San Francisco, we built a special case, and this all came apart. And so when we put it together, it just fit in this corner, with just a little bit to spare. So it was just Also, we have a donation. There was a donation of rare terracotta funerary objects from the late Ming Dynasty. So we put them in here. By the way, we've 3D imaged all this stuff. So if you look on our website, you can find most of these things in 3D where you can zoom and blow them up.
Oh, that's nice.
You have end pieces from the Ming tombs and a Buddhist bodhisattva. And you can see the beautiful work, the carvings, and we have pieces from a few screens that we don't have anymore. This was an end piece with a crane.
During the move, what was the most challenging part to move everything?
Well, we had a moving company help us, but I started in January of 2022 boxing stuff along with about a dozen or so other workers. And we loaded, I think, around 2,600 boxes
Wow.
of books, and we had to keep them in some kind of order, and they had to be unboxed here.
Yeah.
But then things like this, we had to build special cases for. So this part, we built a piece where there were like canvas straps, so we could hang suspended, so it wouldn't get banged around too much. And of course, the headpiece, the crown piece, as they call it, and all the little images all come off. So they all had to be wrapped and packaged, and then
That's a very big project.
it was a big project. It took almost a month to do all the boxing, and it took another several weeks to truck. I think there were 4 or 5 moving vans, and they had to come cross country in the winter, and then they all came here to unload.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a very busy time. The trucks had to be climate controlled, just like the building. So yes. And because it's wintertime, that was a problem because, it rains, it snows, it's very difficult to maintain. But in the event, it came out very well. I would like to show you just one other thing in here. It's difficult to use is that it's on fan-folded paper, meaning it's not separate pages. It's all...
The paper, are they glued together?
I think they are, but they are so well glued that it's very hard to tell where the seams are.
Wow.
As you can see, there's the Chinese text here. They included an English translation as well. Kind of unusual.
Yeah.
But you can see, just randomly open to any page, it's 2 volumes, so you can see the whole story.
That's a good way to learn Konglolo.
It is. Most of the work we do here is not so much literary criticism, but it's history. So the stacks area that Sister Sophia showed you mostly deal with history of medicine, cartography, science, politics and government, traditional Chinese texts, things like that.
Exploring the Ricci Institute felt like opening door after door into centuries of cultural exchange, and this is only half the experience. In the next video, I interview the librarians Mark and Mårten, who protect all of this. It's a deep dive into why old manuscripts and books still matter today, and the meticulous efforts involved in their preservation. They also share the behind-the-scenes story during the relocation process from San Francisco to Boston, how they managed to move thousands of fragile collections across the country. So if you want to finish the full story, don't miss part 2. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next library. Bye!
And one of the reasons we get so many donations